Welcome back to the second part of our interview series at CDO Magazine with Chuck Gahun from Forrester. If you didn't catch the first part, be sure to check it out. You don't want to miss it. So welcome back, Chuck.
Thanks for having me.
Good. So you have published a lot of research around generative AI and done a lot of study on it. What are some of the compelling use cases that you've seen, particularly around maintaining personalization at scale without compromising authenticity? And what is the role that data plays in the evolution of those use cases?
Absolutely. Few things just to start with a good foundation on this topic is, authenticity, content authenticity especially means different things to different consumers and also different things to different enterprises. And the role that data plays in the evolution of these use cases is actually quite critical. But let's talk about some of the use cases. And the way that we look at it, especially through the lens of the research that I have conducted, is that there are the operational efficiency use cases, and then there are the business value generation use cases.
Mm.
Since we've started to adopt and really bring on generative AI capabilities, we have been very focused around operational efficiencies. So look, when I conducted, deep CMS and PIM evaluations, I can tell you that they all already have the ability to generate, copy or romance copy even for product records. So that's already in play. Where we look at some of the capabilities that are a little bit more nascent, like rich media asset generation, where we're still thinking about how great of an on-brand image asset can be created. Yeah, our models are still working to get that right. But let's be real, week over week, day after day, they're learning and getting better and better, especially as you're looking at some of the brand AI models that are coming into play, right? One of the other areas where generative AI has really helped, especially in the PIM segment, is helping fill in product data that's missing to help create some of those mappings. So you can imagine, like, the simple scenario is obviously of brand manufacturer, which isn't as exciting. But if you think about a distributor that might have hundreds of suppliers uploading data into their PIM so that they can use it and surface their products on their marketplaces, you can see how it's probably very tedious for a supplier to have a couple of team members on staff constantly looking at those Excel spreadsheets, loading them into the PIM, and then determining whether the product records are going to be complete. So that's another area where GenAI has really helped. Of course, there's a larger underlying set of operational efficiencies between automated workflows and quality and compliance management and content translations and code generation. I mean, I talked to a shoe manufacturer based out of Latin America who shared with me that, ever since they have built-in generative AI, or started to use the built-in generative AI capabilities on their PIM, they've been able to go to so many more geographies so much faster. But at the same time, business context and risk is lower because their business context is that what's going to happen? They're going to have more returns, but the risk play there is that, yeah, they're shoes. So at the end of the day, it's unlikely that there's going to be too much damage. It's still top line growth for them, right? And then the value generation use cases, thinking about things like real-time campaign optimization and automated customer segments that can be identified, and even doing some of the dynamic experience delivery like I spoke of. Those things are still coming into focus. I think that's really where the power of generative AI will be unleashed as we get the models to move to creating top line growth, new business value, help us think through where products are not being sold. How can I maximize and do even more and more? And then, yeah, even further on that, help me with personalization. Tell me what personalization is working in front of my customers and what's not. Like, there is a tremendous amount that we still have to do with generative AI. We're just getting started. And I think we're starting to see the shift as, we've had 2 years of the operational efficiencies. We're starting to see how can we get this to be a lot more business value oriented. And it's pretty cool to see and deeply understand the path that we're going to go down over the next several years. My research will be focusing pretty heavily on that. But back to your original question, yes, absolutely. Content, data, product information, experiences, those are some of the core pieces that are going to really drive the commerce side in market. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And from a generative AI perspective, I agree with you. We've only just scratched the surface in terms of what we can use this for from a business perspective, especially when it comes to image generation as well, where it's getting better and better by the day, basically. So I wanted to just relate this a little bit to a real world example, just thinking about that as we're going through this. Because we actually have one of our customers that have tried to centralize all of their product experience data. So some of the more marketing oriented data points, similar to how they would have structured the data in the PIM. And they actually use their PIM for some of this content. And I think it goes quite well with some of the things that you've just mentioned here in terms of how you can then use this structured data to generate dynamic content records of that product information as well. Also using AI, but in the first place, just put it together, thus actually significantly reducing the reliance on external agencies. I think you mentioned earlier on as well how the static content records is basically a thing of the past, and you need to actually be able to look towards more dynamic generation in the future to be able to scale this up across your entire product portfolio, right? Rather than just your tier E products. And I agree with you. I think generative AI has a lot of potential for being able to customize, personalize, and even, at the level as in your shoe example here, a shoe manufacturer example, to be able to localize it to different markets as well. So I guess with keeping all this in mind, a frictionless experience has really become the expectation for consumers. Can you, with your experience, talk a little bit about some of the biggest friction points that you're seeing today and how companies can use accurate product information and data to eliminate some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that our research also uncovered this year was that consumers are looking for aggregators and experiences that continue to foster this frictionless experience. And in fact, when they find these experiences, they're willing to go the extra mile and do what is every marketer's dream. They are happy to refer the business virally to their friends, to their networks. So consumers are indicating to our research and survey data that they are willing to go the extra mile. They enjoy aggregators and multi-brand retailers as an example. But if you start thinking about what does it take enterprises that are bringing product to market to make that really happen consistently across the board, a PIM or a product information system or product experiences are at the very core of that. This is not just about an e-commerce product catalog. It's a lot more than that. And it's also not just a content management system wrapping a digital experience into product information and putting that in front of a consumer. So consumers are looking for these richer, consistent aggregators, multi-brand experiences in market. Then I also shared earlier that they're willing to share their data, which would really power some of the ecosystems as we're talking about. But finally, I think some of the things that are really in our way to make these frictionless experiences happen are how do we present product information to a consumer that it adds value? And how, as I was saying earlier, how do we help them discover new products that add value into their lives, which is this concept of weaving a product into the fabric of a consumer's life. And when we think about that, we naturally then think about the easy, ancillary experiences, things like spare parts and so on and so forth. But what if it had to do a lot more with, making a consumer feel very comfortable with the brand so that they feel that they can discover, uncover, and experience more products? Some of our research that talks about the total commerce experience covers this in detail, which is that there's a lot that happens before the consumer purchases the product, when the consumer purchases the product, and then after the consumer purchases the product, what is the experience they're having when they're doing things like unboxing the product? Many brand manufacturers have gone away from adding catalogs and brochures and a lot of information booklets in their products. Their QR codes are becoming pretty standard. So when a consumer unboxes it and comes out to the web or the product experience, what do they find? So there's a lot that we're starting to do around frictionless experiences. I think the challenges are they're not consistent in market. I think our personalization and contextual ability to deliver contextualized content is still not there. Many consumers find digital marketing offers for products they've already purchased, as an example,
Right.
whereas brand is missing that opportunity to help the customer unbox or engage with the product even further. So I think there's still a lot that has to be done to get to true frictionless experiences. The one thing I will share, just to wrap up my thoughts on this, that there is, through generative AI coming into play, I think we'll have the ability to sift through data faster and have some operational efficiencies that I spoke about earlier become the baseline to deliver more frictionless experiences.
Right. I think that's some really good points. There's a lot of information in those points as well, I think, and a lot of this is also very near to the heart of what Stibo Systems does, actually. So, I mean, in general, we provide a centralized, trustworthy source of data and ensuring consistency across all the channels, right? So, with our tools like PDX, our Product Data Exchange, allows you to ensure that consistency across your different channels for that product information, because it's all coming from one source, and thus also adding to one of those friction areas as you were talking about here as well. But also, I think it's very interesting with your point about how to also engage with consumers from a brand perspective, even after the fact. So, for example, we have some of our customers that is using our data as a service offering to be able to provide QR codes to end consumers that can actually access up-to-date information directly from PIM related to the products that they've purchased after the fact. So if updates might come out, or it could be user guides or manuals that might need to be updated and so on, have those be more dynamic and be a core part of how you interact with the end consumer even after the purchase as well. So I think this is a really interesting aspect as well of it.
Great.
All right. So there's one more thing that I wanted to address, and I think this is also something that we addressed in the first part of it, the interview that we had. And this is how an customer of ours can interact with other enterprises out there to build a stronger experience across multiple different services. And we have some of our customers today, just to bring in a concrete example, in the hotel industry, using our software to manage and maintain essentially their products as an experience and not just as selling rooms at a specific destination, right? So you need to do integrations to travel sites. So again, you can get the full breadth of all the services available. Like you need to book the flights, you need to book taxis, you need to have all the amenities while you're there. And even some of the local attractions might be included as part of that package, right? So I think just being able to tie the whole thing together, again, to create a frictionless experience for the end consumer, even though you're buying from multiple different services at the same time, I think is key to this. All right. So I think I want to conclude section 2 of our interview here, and thank you so much for joining me today in this, Chuck. And I want to again shout out to CDO Magazine, and make sure that you check out cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. And stay tuned for the third part of the interview I have with Chuck here.